The stars didn't look the same anymore. Leo sat on the cold metal roof of Storage Block D, staring up at the fake sky above Cora 7. The once peaceful hum of machines now felt louder, heavier. Ever since he sang the song, everything had changed. The lights in the colony flickered without reason. Screens glitched when he passed by. People looked at him longer than usual, some with confusion, others with fear. And deep in his chest, the melody still lived, playing quietly like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. No one had seen the dragon. No one believed him when he tried to tell them what happened. They thought it was just another system malfunction, maybe radiation damage. But Leo knew. The message that appeared across every screen, unauthorized activation detected. Code, Prime Origin, was real. And it had something to do with the song. With him. The whispers began 2 days later. At first, they were faint, like static in the back of his mind. Then they grew louder, clearer, speaking in a language he didn't know but somehow understood. They spoke of keys and gates, of lost worlds and ancient mistakes. He didn't know what any of it meant, but every time he heard the whispers, the air around him grew colder, like the universe itself was holding its breath. He tried to ignore it. He really did. But something was following him. At night, shadows moved where they shouldn't. Machines turned on by themselves. He saw faces in reflections, blurry, glowing eyes watching him from behind glass. And then there were the people. They had started acting strange. Miners who had known Leo for years suddenly forgot his name. Others would stop and stare at him, completely still, as if listening to something he couldn't hear. One woman even whispered the same 5 notes he had sung over and over, before collapsing. She didn't wake up. Leo decided to run. He packed a small bag, food, water, a broken comm device he'd been fixing, and slipped out through the same path he used to find the cave. But the cave wasn't breathing anymore. It was silent. Empty. Dead. The dragon was gone, and with it, any answers. He didn't get far. A sleek black ship landed just outside the colony. Not a miner ship. Not a rescue team. It was too clean. Too fast. It had no name, no lights. And from it stepped a woman in a suit that shimmered like oil under the sun. Her face was pale, her eyes sharp and cold. She moved like she didn't belong to this world. She called herself Agent Rain, from the Galactic Code Authority. She carried no weapons, but everyone listened to her like she was one. She asked one question to everyone she met: who sang the origin? And when she looked at Leo, she didn't need to ask. She already knew. Leo tried to hide, but Rain found him standing near the old comm tower. Her voice was calm, but her words were like ice. You accessed a frequency forbidden by universal law. That song was locked for a reason. Leo backed away. I didn't know. I just... You triggered an echo, she said, stepping closer. A wave of ancient code is now spreading. It is waking things we buried long ago. I didn't mean to. No one ever does. Her hand moved to her belt. A device unfolded, glowing blue, shaped like a tuning fork. She pointed it at him. I'm sorry, Leo. But for the safety of all known systems, you have to be silenced. Before she could activate it, the ground shook. A blast of white light struck between them. The sky above the colony tore open, revealing a black ship unlike anything Leo had seen. It didn't fly, it floated like a thought, bending light around it. A voice echoed from it, deep and musical. The song-bearer is not to be harmed. Beams of energy wrapped around Leo, pulling him upward. Agent Rain tried to follow, but her device shattered in her hand. Leo screamed as he was lifted into the ship, the wind roaring past his ears. Then everything went silent. Inside the ship, it was dark. Not scary dark, calm dark, like being inside a dream. A soft hum surrounded him. Shapes moved in the shadows, figures in cloaks made of static and light. One stepped forward. Its face was hidden, but its voice felt like an old memory. You have awakened the melody of origin, it said. And now, you must learn what it truly is. Leo stared at the figure. Who are you? We are the Cordless, it replied. Guardians of the first song. And you, Leo, you are the last note. Leo didn't understand. None of it made sense. But one thing was clear, his life on Korra 7 was over. Whatever the dragon had given him, whatever he had sung, it had started something far bigger than he ever imagined. And it wasn't done yet. The city did not sleep that night. When Elias laid down the violin, the air still carried the tremors of what he had awakened. Alarms wailed in the alien towers, piercing cries that cut through the silence and spread fear across the streets. Human families huddled inside crumbling houses, whispering to each other, wondering if the end had finally come. But the conquerors were not whispering. Their searchlights carved through the darkness, their metal boots struck the ground like thunder, and their weapons glowed with an unholy blue light as they hunted. Somewhere in the shadows, Elias clutched his violin tight against his chest, his heartbeat racing as fast as the echoes rising from the mountains. He knew they were searching for him. He knew they had felt the same shiver of the earth, the same distant roar that had stirred from the depths. The forbidden song had been broken, and the masters of silence would stop at nothing to kill the one who played it. Elias moved through back alleys, keeping low, moving with the caution of prey being hunted. Yet even as terror gripped him, his mind returned to the sound that had answered his song. He could still hear it if he focused, faint but steady, like a great pulse beneath the ground. The mountains themselves seemed alive, their groans rolling through the earth like whispers of awakening. Every instinct screamed at him to stop, to run, to burn the music sheets and bury the violin, but another force pulled at him harder than fear. The song was not finished. 3 notes had changed the world, and the rest of the melody burned in his veins, begging to be heard. When the night reached its coldest hour, Elias returned to the only place he trusted, the broken house where his grandmother once lived. The walls leaned, the roof was torn, but inside remained her old chair, untouched by time. He set the violin down and sat, clutching the music sheets. As the wind moaned through shattered windows, he whispered into the dark, "What are you? What do you want from me?" His own voice startled him, for he rarely spoke aloud. No answer came, only the faint vibration under his feet, a rhythm too perfect to be mere coincidence. It was like the earth itself was breathing, waiting. He pressed his hand to the wooden floor, and the heartbeat thudded again, stronger, nearer. Before dawn, there was a knock at his door, not the cold fists of aliens, but the fragile knock of a human hand. Elias froze, his chest tight, until a frail voice spoke, "Child, open. It is me." It was Marin, an elder who had survived the fall of the old world. She stepped inside with eyes sharp as knives, her hair silver, her back bent yet unbroken. She looked at the violin and the music sheets and sighed, as if she had expected this day. "So it has begun," she whispered. Elias demanded answers, his fear spilling into anger. What is it? What's buried under the mountain? Why do they fear a song? Marin lowered herself into the chair and told him the story no child was ever meant to hear. Long before the alien conquest, when humanity still ruled the skies, the earth had a guardian. Not a machine, not a god, but a living force older than memory itself. A dragon, vast as mountains, its body woven with fire and stone. It had fought beside humans in wars no book dared to record, shielding them when darkness from the stars sought to wipe them out. But in time, humanity forgot, turned its back, and the guardian slept. When the conquerors came, they feared not human armies but the one buried beneath. They silenced all music, for only music could wake it. The forbidden melody was more than sound, it was the key that unlocked the dragon's dream. Marin's voice shook as she spoke, but her eyes burned with fierce light. And now, Elias, you have turned that key. The mountain is stirring. The heartbeat has returned. Elias listened, torn between awe and dread. A dragon. It sounded like madness, like a myth, and yet he had felt the heartbeat, heard the roar. He whispered, "Why me?" Marin placed a wrinkled hand on his arm. "Because the melody chooses. It does not fall into just any hands. It calls only to one who carries the courage to play it. And now, the conquerors know. They will not stop until they break you." Her words made the room colder, and Elias realized the truth, his life was no longer his own. The melody had chosen him, and with it came a burden heavier than stone. The following day, the city shook with fear as alien patrols grew more brutal. Loudspeakers ordered curfews, and anyone caught outside vanished into the night. Yet whispers spread among humans, rumors of a sound that had cut through the silence, a sound that made even the conquerors tremble. Some claimed they had heard it too, faintly, in their dreams. They spoke of thunder in the mountains, of a shadow rising. Hope, a word long forbidden, returned in hushed tones. But the aliens heard the whispers as well, and their fury doubled. That evening, Elias climbed to the edge of the city, his violin wrapped against his chest. He looked toward the mountains, where storm clouds gathered unnaturally, lit from below by flashes of crimson fire. The earth shook once more, and the sound that followed was unmistakable. It was a roar, ancient and furious, carried across the valleys like the cry of the world itself. Elias closed his eyes, and in the silence that followed, he heard something else, something far more terrifying and wondrous. A voice, deep as stone, echoing not in his ears but in his soul. "Who wakes me?" Elias stumbled back, gasping, the violin nearly slipping from his hands. He had not imagined it. The dragon was real. It was awake enough to speak, awake enough to know his presence. And it was waiting for his answer. The voice inside Elias's soul did not fade with the wind, it lingered like fire pressed into his chest. He stood frozen at the city's edge, staring at the mountains as clouds churned above them. The roar that had carried through the night still echoed in his bones, but the words, those impossible ancient words, burned hotter than fear. "Who wakes me?" Elias's lips parted but no sound came. How could he answer something that should not even exist? His hands trembled so badly he nearly dropped the violin, clutching it to his chest as if it were the only anchor holding him in place. His ears strained against the silence, praying it had been his imagination, yet in the back of his mind he could still hear it, the steady heartbeat of something vast and alive beneath the earth. The masters of silence did not imagine it either. Across the city, alien towers flared with red light, their mechanical voices shrieking through the air, summoning patrols, ordering weapons into position. They did not look triumphant. They looked afraid. Elias realized then that the song he had played, the forbidden melody, had broken more than silence, it had broken their control. He ran back through the alleys, keeping his head low, slipping between shadows as patrols stormed the streets. His feet carried him to Marin's crumbling house again, the only place that still felt like it belonged to the world before. She was waiting, her old eyes filled not with surprise but with grim certainty. "You heard it," she said before he could speak. Elias nodded, his breath short, his voice a whisper. "It spoke to me." Her shoulders sagged as though a burden had been confirmed. "Then the choice is made. The Guardian has woken enough to notice you. There is no turning back now." Elias sank into the chair, clutching the violin, his mind racing with questions that had no answers. A dragon, alive beneath the mountain. A guardian bound by music. Why him, of all people? He was no soldier, no hero, just a broken young man clinging to songs the world had tried to forget. Yet the melody had chosen him. He asked Marin what it wanted, but she only shook her head. "The dragon does not serve. It remembers. If you wake it fully, it will rise not as your tool, but as Earth's justice. And justice is never gentle." The words haunted him through the night as the ground quaked again, stronger this time, rattling broken glass from the windows and shaking the cracked walls. Elias dreamed of fire flooding the skies, of wings blotting out the stars, of an eye the size of a house staring directly into him. He woke drenched in sweat, heart pounding in rhythm with the same thudding beneath the earth. The dragon was not just stirring, it was listening. Each hour, its awareness grew sharper, its presence heavier in his mind. And Elias understood the truth he dared not say aloud, it was waiting for him to play again. The following evening, as shadows stretched long and the air turned cold, Elias crept toward the city's edge once more. Alien ships circled the mountains, their engines screaming as they dropped heavy machines onto the slopes. Floodlights cut through the mist, searching, but the mountain groaned beneath them, cracking, spitting out plumes of red fire as if warning them to leave. The soldiers did not leave. They fired beams of light into the rock, desperate to seal whatever stirred below. From where he hid, Elias could feel the dragon's fury rumble through the ground, a rage so vast it nearly knocked him off his feet. And through the noise of engines and gunfire, its voice tore through his skull again, so loud he thought his head would split apart. "Why do they strike my bones? Why do they claw at my sleep? Who dares awaken me?" The pressure of that voice dropped Elias to his knees. He clutched his ears though the sound was not in them, it was in his blood. The violin dug into his ribs as he fell, and only then did the roaring soften, leaving a silence heavy with expectation. He realized the dragon was not speaking to the aliens. It was speaking only to him. Answer. The demand throbbed in his mind. Why have you called me? His throat worked uselessly, no sound leaving his lips. He was nothing, just one frightened man. Yet the dragon expected an answer. And then he understood, it was not words it wanted. It was the song. He lifted the violin with trembling hands. The aliens were everywhere, their machines tearing at the mountain, their voices rising in panic as cracks widened, spilling fire from within. They had seen him now, searchlights locking onto his form. But Elias did not move. He set the bow to the strings, his heart hammering in time with the earth. He played the next note of the forbidden melody. The sound rose above the noise of engines and weapons, carrying into the night like a spear of pure light. The mountain roared in response, a sound so violent it split stone. He played again, and the ground heaved, tossing alien machines into the air as if they were toys. He played louder, the melody pouring from his soul, and the mountain erupted with fire and smoke. The sky turned crimson as the ancient eye opened fully within the cracks, a vast golden gaze burning through the darkness. The aliens screamed, their weapons flashing uselessly at the fissures. Ships crashed against the cliffs as waves of heat and force surged upward. Elias barely held the violin steady, his fingers raw, but he could not stop now. The dragon's presence filled him completely, its voice a thunderous whisper in his bones, I am the last. I am the fire. You have called me, human, and I rise to your song. The ground split wide, and a colossal shape pushed upward, wings of molten stone unfurling, scales glowing like rivers of lava, horns scraping the clouds. The mountain was no longer a mountain, it was the dragon itself, shedding its prison of rock and standing taller than any city tower. Elias fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face, unable to breathe as awe crushed him. The dragon's roar split the sky, silencing every alien scream, shaking every broken building to its foundation. For the first time in his life, Elias saw the conquerors afraid, truly afraid. And for the first time in generations, humanity looked up at the sky and felt not despair, but something long buried. Hope, carried on wings of fire. The night sky burned as the dragon rose from the mountain, its wings stretching wide enough to blot out the alien lights. Its body was a fortress of fire and stone, scales glowing like rivers of molten metal, every movement shaking the ground beneath it. The roar it unleashed was not just sound, it was a storm that rattled bones and shattered glass across the city. For the first time since the aliens had descended upon Earth, their machines hesitated. Their ships hung in the sky like frightened insects, engines whining but unable to advance. On the ground, soldiers who had always marched without fear now faltered, their glowing eyes flickering with something Elias had never seen in them before, terror. From his place at the city's edge, Elias could barely keep hold of the violin, his arms shaking from exhaustion. The melody he played had not only awakened the beast, it had bound them. Every note seemed to pulse through the dragon, every bow stroke a spark that fueled its fury. When his bow dragged across the strings, the dragon moved as if guided by the song. When he faltered, the beast hesitated, turning its burning gaze toward him as though reminding him, keep playing. Elias understood then that he was not only the awakener. He was the voice, the guide, the one chosen to channel its wrath into the world. The aliens recovered quickly from their shock. Orders barked in their metallic language echoed through the city as ships pulled into formation, weapons glowing with energy. Beams of searing blue light shot from the sky, striking the dragon's chest and wings. The ground trembled as explosions rippled across its body, but instead of falling, the beast only roared louder. Fire burst from its mouth, a river of molten flame that cut across the heavens and ripped through the first wave of ships. Metal crumpled like paper, burning wrecks spiraling into the mountainside, their screams drowned by the storm of fire. Humans hiding in the ruins gasped as they saw the invincible fleet torn apart in moments. For the first time in their lives, they cheered. Hope, long dead, flickered alive in their eyes. Elias's arms burned, but he forced himself to keep playing. Each note poured strength into the dragon, weaving man and beast into one force. The melody filled him until it was no longer just music, it was fury, sorrow, and love all tangled into one. His body swayed with the song as if he were no longer alone but part of something greater, something ancient. Through the bond, he felt the dragon's emotions, The rage of centuries trapped beneath stone, the betrayal of being forgotten, but also the fierce, protective love it still carried for the fragile creatures it had sworn to guard. Elias felt its heartbeat inside his own chest, a furnace of fire pushing him beyond his limits. The battle grew darker. The aliens brought out weapons Elias had never seen, monstrous cannons that pulsed with a violet light so deadly that when fired, whole cliffs melted into glass. One struck the dragon square in the side, and the beast staggered, bellowing in pain. Elias nearly dropped his violin as the connection filled him with agony. His vision blurred, blood dripping from his nose, yet he played harder, louder, forcing the melody to rise above his pain. The dragon's roar answered, fire flooding across the battlefield in waves that swallowed the cannons and crushed the alien armies like ants. All across the city, humans emerged from hiding. They lifted stones, sticks, and even stolen alien weapons, their courage awakened by the sight of the dragon. For the first time in generations, they fought back. Patrols were ambushed in alleys, watchtowers were set ablaze, and cries of defiance filled the streets. It was not the dragon's fire alone that shook the aliens, it was humanity's sudden refusal to kneel. Elias could feel it in the melody, the way the song changed as the voices of his people rose. The forbidden tune was not meant only for destruction, it was a song of unity, a call to every human heart. The dragon was fire, but Elias was its music, and the humans became its echo. The aliens realized this, too. Their ships shifted formation, focusing all fire not on the dragon but on the ground. Beams lanced toward Elias, knowing that if he fell silent, the beast would falter. The first blast struck nearby, hurling stone and earth around him. He stumbled, shielding the violin with his own body. His bow hand shook, fingers raw, but he forced the melody onward even as the ground cracked under him. The dragon's golden eye turned, fixing on him, and in that look Elias saw not just fury but trust. The beast's voice thundered through his soul, "Do not stop. Through your song, I live." With a cry that tore his throat raw, Elias pushed himself upright and played as he had never played before. The melody soared, rising higher, louder, a storm of sound that filled the air like a living force. The dragon answered, its wings beating once, sending a shockwave that shattered the alien fleet. Fire swept the skies, wrapping around Elias like a shield as the aliens' last desperate blasts were turned aside. He felt power surge through him, more than his body could hold, but the melody carried him, each note blazing like a star. The battle turned. Alien ships fell like rain, their engines exploding, their weapons silenced. The ground armies scattered, crushed beneath fire and stone. The sky glowed red with flame, but beneath it, humans raised their fists and voices in triumph. They no longer cowered, they believed. Elias collapsed to his knees, his bow hand numb, the violin still pressed to his chest. The dragon hovered above, wings blotting out the stars, its fire fading to embers as the last of the fleet fell silent. For a moment, the world was still, broken only by the sound of his ragged breathing and the distant cries of his people rising in freedom. The dragon lowered its massive head, golden eyes locking onto Elias with something beyond fury, beyond power. Respect. Its voice rumbled through the bond, soft yet vast as the earth itself. Your song woke me, but your courage guides me. Together, we rise. Elias bowed his head, tears running down his face, and for the first time since the world had fallen, he allowed himself to believe. This was not the end. This was the beginning. The world burned like a battlefield caught between night and dawn. Alien ships still filled the sky, blotting out the stars, their weapons blazing streaks of blue and violet light. The dragon soared above them, wings vast enough to shake the air with every beat, fire pouring from its jaws like rivers of the sun. Yet for all its fury, the beast's strength began to waver. Each time its flames dimmed, Elias felt the weakness in his own chest, the weight of exhaustion crushing his ribs. The bond tied them together more tightly than blood, and the truth pressed heavy in his mind. If he fell silent, if he dropped his violin, the dragon would falter, and the last hope of humanity would die. The aliens knew this too. Every ship, every gun, turned not toward the dragon but toward the ground where Elias knelt among ruins. Beams of light scorched the earth around him, blasting craters into broken stone, forcing him to stumble back as debris rained down. He shielded the violin with his own body, bow trembling in his hand. His arms were numb, his fingers raw and bleeding, but he forced the melody onward, playing through the pain. The song rose weakly at first, his breath ragged, but each note drew fire from the dragon, Each phrase wrapped the sky in defiance. Humans rallied around him in a desperate circle. They had no armor, no great weapons, but they stood as shields, hurling stones, swinging pipes, firing stolen rifles into the sky. Men and women, the old and the young, pressed together, a wall of courage around the fragile musician who held their future. Elias could see their faces, dirt-streaked and blooded, yet burning with a light he had never seen before. They believed. They believed in him, in the dragon, in the song. Their belief carried into his chest, strengthening his shaking arms, turning weakness into will. But the enemy did not relent. From the largest ship, hovering above like a black star, a final weapon unfolded. It was not a cannon or a beam but something darker, a sphere of pulsing light that bent the air around it. Elias felt the dragon's roar shudder through the bond, not with rage but with alarm. That is silence made into a weapon, the beast thundered in his soul. If it strikes, all sound dies. Even your melody. Elias's blood turned cold. If the silent sphere reached him, the bond would break, and the dragon would collapse into stillness forever. The alien weapon grew brighter, charging with a scream that pierced the sky. The dragon soared upward, desperate to strike, but the ships closed in, their fire lashing across its wings and forcing it back. The weapon pulsed once, twice, then released, a wave of darkness sweeping down like a tide. Elias lifted the violin, though his arms felt like lead, and drew the bow across the strings. The melody rose, faint but defiant, clashing against the silence. The sound cracked, splintered, nearly drowned, but he pushed harder, his soul screaming through every note. The forbidden song was not just music now, it was a battle cry, a prayer, the last thread holding the world together. The silence struck him like a hammer. His ears rang, his vision blurred white, and his bone nearly slipped. For a moment the song faltered, the dragon staggering in the sky. Humanity gasped, their wall breaking as despair rushed in. Elias fell to his knees, the violin heavy in his hands, the silence pressing on his chest like a mountain. He could not breathe. He could not think. But then he felt it, hands gripping his shoulders, voices shouting around him. The humans who stood by him were not silent. They screamed his name, they cried out in defiance, their voices rising even as alien fire cut them down. Their shouts, their courage, wove into his fading strength. The melody was never his alone. It was theirs. With a final breath, Elias lifted the bow again. Blood streaked the strings, his vision swam, but he played. The last part of the forbidden melody poured out, raw and broken but unyielding. The song rose higher and higher, a storm against the silence, until the very air trembled. The dragon answered with a roar so vast it split the heavens. Its wings blazed with fire, its body a living inferno. It hurled itself into the heart of the alien fleet, tearing through ships, ripping their silence apart with flame and fury. The great black vessel shuddered as the dragon struck, fire engulfing the silent sphere, crushing it in a burst of light that tore the sky open. The world shook. The silence shattered. The song blazed triumphant, carried not only by Elias but by every voice around him, every human heart that refused to die quiet. The alien fleet crumbled, ships falling in burning arcs across the horizon. The dragon soared higher, its roar echoing across valleys and oceans, a sound not of rage but of freedom. Elias collapsed, the violin slipping from his grasp. His hands were ruined, his body broken, his breath shallow. He thought he might never rise again. Yet before the darkness claimed him, a shadow fell over him. The dragon lowered its massive head, one golden eye watching him with something like tenderness. Its voice filled his soul one final time. The song was never forbidden. It was waiting for you. The humans gathered around, lifting Elias gently, their cheers rising as dawn's first light broke through the smoke. For the first time in generations, the sun rose on a free earth. The dragon spread its wings across the horizon, fire trailing like banners, and humanity knew their silence was over. Elias closed his eyes, exhausted but smiling, as the melody lingered in the air. It was not the song of death. It was the song of a beginning, the first note of a new dawn.